I think the weather might be trying to tell me that I really need to get a move on and film my February wrap-up before March is over in like a day or two. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. I just uploaded my first video in like over a month. It was my March reading vlog. You can check that out up here if you would like to watch that and haven't already seen it. And I'm trying to keep the momentum going, so I'm going to film my February wrap-up. It is March 29th. It's been a while since I read these, 2 months for some of them, but I've got good notes, thankfully, and I'm just gonna power through. I don't want to edit this video, and I think I'm just not going to. Let's see how it goes. The dog will probably bark maniacally in like 30 seconds, requiring extensive editing. But for now, let's push on in. The first book that I read in February was Thud by Pratchett. This is number 34 in the Discworld series. For those of you who are dropping in more recently, the Discworld series is a fantasy series of 41 books that all take place on a flat, disc-shaped world that travels through space on the back of 4 elephants on top of a turtle. And all sorts of hilarious but incredibly profound stories are set there. This is number 7 in the City Watch subseries, which focuses on the Ankh-Morpork City Watch. And we see the anniversary of Coombe Valley, which is a battle between dwarves and trolls like thousands of years ago. It's, the original, the big conflict between the two races, and as the anniversary of this battle is approaching, tensions are mounting in Ankh-Morpork because there's lots of dwarves and lots of trolls living there now. So when an important dwarf leader is found dead with a trolls club next to the body, only Sam Vimes, the most honest man anybody knows, can be trusted to get to the bottom of it all. I last read this close to 10 years ago, so I had forgotten almost everything that happened, and it was incredible. I loved this book. I just had so much fun. I got so engrossed with the story and not knowing what was gonna happen and wanting to find everything out that I read until 2 a.m. on a work night, and I probably would have kept reading, except I had to get up early the next morning. I then finished Harem, The World Behind the Veil by Alev, Lytle, Croutier. This introduces readers to the world of Turkish harems, which extend way beyond what at least my modern conception of the word tends to imply. There's very little documentation about the women who actually lived in these, areas, societies, I don't know what you'd call it exactly, or how they live, but Croutier did a lot of research across a huge variety of sources, including her own family, some of whom grew up in harems. And it was such a pleasant surprise. I did not expect it to be as well-researched or well-written or as enjoyable as it was. I don't know why. Why do I go in expecting bad things of books? But I don't know, sometimes you do. Sometimes you just have a vibe that you're like, I don't think this is gonna be good. And then it just surprises you. This was one of those for me. This feels like the book that I would read if I wanted to write historical fiction that was set in a harem or was going to have scenes in a harem or something, and I wanted to really nail down that environment and that atmosphere, because that's what this book is really about, the actual day-to-day life, and some of the more overarching social structure stuff, but it really is a lot about how women lived. I then picked up a fantasy novella, Penric's Fox by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is number 3 in the Penric and Desdemona series. It's a series of novellas about a young sorcerer who lives in a world where sorcerers gain their powers through a demon that lives inside of them. But this isn't a hellish thing at all. It exists within the religious structure of the world. And in this book, a sorceress is found murdered and her demon is missing, so Penric gets involved with the investigation. It was just so lovely. The world building is so so beautiful in these books. I love slowly exploring new parts and getting exposed to new parts of what Bujold has created in her world and how her system works and stuff. It's just really fun. The plot was so engaging, and at times it's like high stakes, but it never feels tense. I'm not sure exactly what it is about it, but this book just feels so cozy to me. It was another book that was so good that I stayed up later than I should have, really, to read it. And I actually technically read it in one sitting. I picked it up before bed thinking like, okay, I'll read part of it. It's a novella. Maybe I'll read 20%. And no, I was like, I could not fall asleep until I had read all of it. I read the first two books in the series in 2020 or 2021. I can't actually remember when. I think 2021 maybe. But I sort of put the series on hold while I was reading some of the sequels that I owned and that I had access to on Scribd. So now that I've done a lot of that, I'm really excited to get back into this series and I don't know if I want to binge read them because they're so lovely or ration them. That's what I wrote on, I don't know, the 5th of February or something. And, keep on watching to find out which I ended up doing. Before continuing with that series, though, I decided to pick up a new series. That was the Thursday Next series, which starts with the Eyre affair. This is by Jasper Fforde. This is in alternate history set in England in the 1980s, where England and Russia have been fighting over the Crimean Peninsula for 170 years. Vampires and werewolves exist. There's a group of time-traveling secret agents, and everyone is super obsessed with literature. That last point, that's the key point, in case the title did not give it away. Thursday, the main character, is a literatech, so it's a not particularly respected branch of law enforcement that focuses on literary crimes like plagiarism and stuff, which is actually fairly serious in this world. But her distant connection with a deadly criminal pulls her into an exciting adventure. This is not identical, but I feel like if you like the Invisible Library series, which I was obsessed with in 2022, then you might like this. It's sort of like a wacky sci-fi alternative history version of the Invisible Library, which is sort of, a wacky steampunk alternate history fantasy book with lots of books. So, and also, if you just like books about books, then this has so many literary references in it. Don't pick this up if you don't like books where you just get thrown into a world and you figure it out as you go. I don't mind that always, but it is definitely one of those books where you just go, what's going on? I have no idea. Things are happening and I have to learn how everything is structured as I discover things, which some people love and some people don't, so it's good to know. It does have a very fun, captivating plot, and while it wasn't an absolute favorite, I was really looking forward to reading the sequel. I couldn't resist the Penric and Desdemona series, though, so I picked up Masquerade in Lodi, also by Lois, McMaster, Bujold, of course. This is number 4 in the series' internal chronology, but it was published later. So I'm reading them in the series order that the character is experiencing, not the series order that they were published in. In this case, we actually pick up Penric's story. I think it's more than 5 years after than the previous book, in another city altogether. And it's a canal city with major ports. There's major Venice vibes. I really enjoyed it. We have a situation where a man has been rescued by fishermen with a wild demon inside of him, and Penric needs to resolve the situation. Again, it was just wonderful, and I loved it so much. February, I was in a real series starting mood. So I also picked up Mistress of My Fate by Hallie Rubenhold. This is number 1 in the Confessions of Henrietta Lightfoot series, and I'm just going to read this description. Set during a period of revolution and turmoil, Mistress of My Fate is the first book in a trilogy about Henrietta Lightfoot, a young woman who was abandoned as a baby and raised alongside her cousins, noble children of a lord and lady. At just 16 years old, circumstance and a passionate love affair tear Henrietta away from everything she knows, leading to a new life fending for herself on the streets of 18th century London as a courtesan, gambler, and spirited intellect of the city. So I bought this because Hallie Rubenhold's nonfiction book, The Five, about the women killed by Jack the Ripper, was incredible. So I bought this just on spec. Like, I loved the author. I'll give her fiction a try. Why not? And I finally picked it up because it sounded like it could be a kind of fun Valentine's Day read. It sounded like it could have some like kind of fun, feisty romance vibes. I wasn't sure. And I never read reviews before reading a book because I'm way too easily swayed. But like, something told me to check it out this time. I don't know why. I had a vibe, so I did. And the first review I actually really saw was from a Storygraph user whose name is Rogue Runner. And it said, "Oh, Henrietta, I wanted to like you, but God, you were annoying. Especially in the first few chapters, I just wanted to wring your silly neck for being such a goddamn pushover. For a book called Mistress of My Fate, Henrietta Lightfoot spends a whole lot of time being pushed around and made to do things by other people. This doesn't really change throughout the book. She makes a few stupid errors, other people get in the way of her plans, which mostly seem to be put into her head by other people, and makes some friends and suitors by looking pretty and acting prude. And that simultaneously made me both incredibly excited to try the book and also so sure I wasn't going to like it. Like, almost I was so sure I wasn't going to like it that all of a sudden I was just like, I just need to try it and see. I read 3% and it just did not work. It was one of those books where all of the elements, all of the story elements, all of the vibe, that's stuff that should appeal to me. That's stuff that I am interested in, that I often enjoy. But in this case, it just didn't work. It just didn't click. So it was a perfect book to DNF. I don't need to continue that. I don't need to pick up the sequel. And I will keep an eye out for Rubenhold's future nonfiction because that I know I love. As a palate cleanser, I picked up another Penric and Desdemona. This one was Penric's Mission by Lois, McMaster, Bujold. Again, of course, number 5 in the internal chronology of the series. In this case, Penric is on an undercover mission to a new to him and to myself as the reader part of the world, and it just so perfectly captured what I love about this series. The plot and the adventure is so fun. It moves along at such a nice pace. It's such a great mix of character moments and like that sort of more slow, intimate, like type scene, and then action scenes and adventure and things happening. And because we get to experience this new country from Penric's eyes, we get to sort of have more of what I find Bujold does so well, which is that style of world building where the character is discovering and the reader is discovering. I don't know, she just does it perfectly. We also meet some fantastic characters, and at least one of them I think, or at least at this point, I thought we were going to see a lot more of. So that had me so excited as well. I wanted to pick up some short stories though, and this one just was calling to me. It was called 5 Tuesdays in Winter by Lily King. As I said, it's a short story collection. I have a note to read the description, but I don't have it here with me, so editing Rosie will put that in. I know I said I wasn't going to edit this, but like, we'll make one exception. I have to put the overlays on anyway, which is why this isn't live. Told in the intimate voices of unique and endearing characters of all ages, these tales explore desire and heartache, loss and discovery, moments of jolting violence, and the inexorable tug toward love at all costs. A bookseller's unspoken love for his employee rises to the surface. A neglected teenage boy finds much-needed nurturing from an unlikely pair of college students hired to house-sit. A girl's loss of innocence at the hands of her employer's son becomes a catalyst for strength and confidence, and a proud nonagerian rages helplessly in his granddaughter's hospital room. Romantic, hopeful, brutally raw, and sparingly honest, some even slipping into the surreal. These stories are, above all, about King's enduring subject of love. Anyway, about this book. It took a few stories to grow on me, but then I really started to love King's style. There's so many excellent stories. There's some really lovely character moments, and just like, you know, those little peek into a moment in a time or in a story type stories. Wow, that was an incoherent sentence, but we're rolling with it. King has that wonderfully concentrated prose that I just really adore in short stories. It's very much one where I read one or two, and then I come back and read one or two, the next day, sort of spread it out a bit. And the final story built the most perfect emotional tension. I love how short stories can do that. They can just like really build up that emotional tension, and I love it because I know that it's short, right? There's no like, oh my goodness, is this tension going to build for a 400-page novel? It's just this one little sitting, and I know I get that catharsis at the end, and it's gonna be great, and this was perfect. However, also make sure you check the content warnings because I think there are a lot in this collection. I decided to keep my sequel reading on like a good foot and picked up Lost in a Good Book by Jasper Fforde. This is the second Thursday Next book. And at the end of the first book, there was a certain relationship plot point that I was like, I don't love it. And then at the beginning of the second point, it just was getting more and more prevalent, and I was liking it less and less. As I just said, I quite enjoyed the first book, and I was really excited for this. I thought it would be so fun to have a series where I'm just like speeding through them like I am with Penric and Desdemona, right? Like, I want to get excited for this. I want to be sucked in. I just read this other one and enjoyed it, so now is the time. And unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. What was funny and delightful and just like enjoyable in the first book was just, wee, so wacky, so silly. It, again, was one of those books where it had all of these elements that said Rosie should love this. This should be a book that Rosie loves. If you look at any book that someone would read this and compare it to, I probably really enjoy it. But for some reason, this one just didn't work for me. It felt like all of the characters were falling apart like wet cardboard. I think that was part of what really did it for me. I love humorous books, and I don't need like super deep complex characters, but these ones just didn't work on any level for me. And I ended up DNFing the book about 30% of the way through. Maybe it does get better. Maybe I just needed to keep reading the series. Maybe I needed to just keep reading this book. But something I think I'm realizing is I have zero interest in books or series where it's like, you just need to get through XYZ and then you'll love it. There are so many books in the world right now that I am so actively excited to read, and so just like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to get to that I don't want to spend time on books where I'm going like, oh yeah, I guess I should finish that. So I read another Penric and Desdemona. It was Mira's Last Dance by Lois, McMaster, Bujold, of course. This is number 6 in the internal chronology. And as you can see, I just cannot get enough of these books. I love how Bujold has been interweaving the present story with what Penric is doing right now and some things that happened in his past off page that were alluded to, and we're gradually through the books learning more and more about this past situation and how it influenced him. And in terms of this story, there is a plot point and just like general plan in this novella that was amazing, incredible. Mira is the name of one of the women who Penric's demon had previously inhabited. And as the title suggests, she has a really important role in this book. And it was just so cool to see that side, because that's something that we've alluded to in the past books, but hadn't been as fully explored. And now I just want like 12 of these exploring all of the demon's past hosts. You know, they're so good. I also, at the very end of February, started the Fran Lebowitz Reader by Fran Lebowitz. This is a collection of essays and memoir snippets, but I didn't finish it until March. So keep your eyes peeled for my March wrap-up. And I also, halfway through the month, started Guest House for Young Widows by Azadeh Moaveni, but I am still only like halfway through. So, like, fingers crossed that I will review that in my April wrap-up. We'll see. Let me know down below in the comments, what have you been reading in February and in March now that this is coming out? What are you excited about? What have you enjoyed? And yeah, if you like this video, make sure you give it a like down below. If you'd like to see more of my videos, make sure you hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.